Uh, it's funny just because I don't have a TV anymore, so I actually don't even know anymore. Like I would have to buy one of those sports subscriptions because everything is now subscribe. You
I'm
know,
surprised you know so much without the television. I mean, I don't really watch TV that much either, but I guess it's the same thing for me, right? Like, I'm learning a lot of my stuff through the internet, which is scary in some ways because what if our sources aren't but so great? I do have CNN,
Yeah, well, they're not great on the TV
MSNBC,
either.
and what is it? What's the European one? BBC.
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 Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I have BBC on my phone, so like I get updates here and there from their stuff, and then I see stuff online on Facebook, but it makes you wonder, like, what about all these other people? It's like the resources out there are really messed up, and then you got
It's
presidents.
hard. It's very difficult. I'm gonna say like right now, like most of my research, if you notice, is very heavily on Associated Press, Reuters,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I don't even feel great about the New York Times. I honestly just know that they have a staff that's large enough to actually look at the news and give me the correct information, just the information, not necessarily the right opinion or the right direction on the article. So it's an interesting time for all of the news sources and media sources because they're intertwined now in some ways. In some ways, we're learning our stuff from both the primary sources and secondary sources. I need to do this. I'm going to do it.
It's all right.
It's one of those days. Like my nose has been like this all day. I
Yeah,
This is actually one of the one issues of wearing a mask all day. You can't
yeah,
blow your nose.
yeah. So the other thing I was gonna ask, how do you feel about Fox, not Fox, well, Fox News and Trump News, that he's trying to do his own thing or whatever it is? Do you think that if he does get, well, he's supposed to get kicked out, if he starts his own news organization, how do you feel like that's going to affect people's trust in the news?
I mean, there's already Newsmax and there's OANN.
Yeah,
So I look at it that way.
and
With those two,
Epoch Times, and Prager University. Prager U is freaking tricky as hell. I don't know if you've ever seen any of their stuff, but it's like
no.
they basically use like cartoons and like real simple. Do you feel like it's fair and blah blah blah? Like then the way they talk to you, I could see how it's appealing to people. But then like if you listen very carefully to like some of the stuff that they're saying, you could tell like some of it's really like based on discrimination, um, old school 1950s thinking type of mentality. Oh, go to the beaches with the restrictions of blah 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 blah. Like they were talking about one episode that I saw like real quick of it. Like it was a commercial of it. They were talking about how like going to beaches or whatever it is and polluting the beaches, and like back in the days you could do certain things. It was all about social justice warrior type mentality, things like worrying about little petty things in their mind, even though it's for the bigger picture, was for the to and betterment of, is that the right word, to better society or whatever it is. um but they're like, well, wow, don't you want your freedom? But they would say it in a way that seemed like it was all about like just making it seem like it's treating you unfair, like is, you know what I mean, like it was weird.
Hmm.
And I could see how like weak-minded people could see that. It's like, I don't know, and things about like, oh, shouldn't women have they were talking about women's rights, and they were saying something about how because women's rights and minority rights, they were saying that if we focus so much on them, like how does that benefit them, and so on and so forth. And I'm like, it's because they're being mistreated, asshole. I'm like, I see it, like you have to treat women and treat minorities and treat like immigrants and whatever else a certain way because they've been mistreated. Like they need changes in their lives to be put in a better place. If we ignore it and just say, well, they could do it on their own, the resources are there for them, that's bullshit. Excuse my language, but it's like they don't give these resources for people. A lot of people, even though they make it seem like equal opportunity, not equal opportunity. What's the word that they use for people of color? It's not equal opportunity. Damn, why can't I remember it? Affirmative action, is that it?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I was wondering if you were looking for affirmative action
Yeah,
or if you
yeah.
were
They
looking.
were like, oh, affirmative action, this, that, and whatever. It's like, why should somebody, a person of color, like they made it seem like it was an innocent thing to think. Why should a person of color, a person, or a minority, or whatever, be treated a certain way? Doesn't that like not give them incentive to do better on their own and blah 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 blah? And then it also takes away from other people. And I'm like, oh god. I'm like, you're missing the whole point of it. I understand we shouldn't need affirmative action. We shouldn't need these things, but because society is the way it is, that's why it's there. Like people have acknowledged it. Now you're trying to make it like it's so nice to like, oh, you don't need that. We could do it on
It's
our own.
also
America.
adaptation. It's all
Yep.
adaptation. Like
Yep.
it was a non-perfect theory that we are learning to figure out in a different way. Like now we're understanding that you have to give direct access to communities to get to empower themselves in some fashion. And honestly, I don't think we've got it right because a lot of it ends up being gentrification. It ends up being people kicked out of their areas into which is a two-edged sword. It's because a lot of that creates a lot of areas where there are very poor, I hate to say it, poor Democrats in one area, and then they're just stuck in that area, and then they are forced out, but by more Democrats. So that's great because then the rest of the country has more Democrats, right? But at the same time, they're just getting dispersed from where they lived beforehand. And that's not okay. I mean, if they want to move, they want to move. That's different. I know a lot of people who feel but they've been told that they feel unsafe in their own cities.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard. Every time I've heard somebody move out of the city who's a person of color, it's always been that they felt unsafe. And I'm always wondering if how much of that is propaganda and how much of it is reality.
How do you feel about like these politicians talking about the Democrat cities are the bad ones and this, that, and whatever? Have you noticed that? Like they talk about they're just ODing with that nowadays. They're just it's crazy, man. Like
propaganda. It's doing the same thing as the 1950s and 60s all over again.
Yep. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. I don't know. How do you feel about it, Teresa?
Well, oh yeah, how do you feel about it? Well,
I think, it definitely comes into play whenever you're moving or going anywhere where you're thinking about, I know we were talking about at one point moving to Florida. And Rob was like, "Oh no, it's too red down there, and there's a lot of rednecks, and it's too dangerous."
I didn't say it like that.
Well, Florida is like one of the only places that the further north you go, the more south you are, which is like it's crazy, But I think people of color, they definitely have to be conscious of where they're moving to, and I think now within Trump's America specifically, you have to really be aware because it's let people be as ugly as they've always wanted to be, and that neighbor that would callously call cops behind your back is now doing it in your face and telling you, I don't want you in my neighborhood. This is how I feel. I think that, we would hope that it would be propaganda and that they're just trying to use it as a scare tactic to keep people out. But I don't think that that's actually true. Not now. Not nowadays. I think nowadays it's a real threat. And there are things that are happening. I know at one point I was reading things about, in Georgia that there were people that were getting hung from trees, and they were saying, "Oh, it was suicide. It was suicide." Oh, but this person managed to climb into a tree with their hands bound and hang themselves from a tree. Like there's stuff going on, and there's stuff goes on in every neighborhood, and the longer you live in a neighborhood, the more you know where you shouldn't and should go.
yes.
But it's just like, I think now especially with Trump's America, we have to be more wary, more cautious, and just keep our eyes open for everything.
Yeah.
I am going to challenge you. Well, two things. First, number one is the only person that I ever felt like was a person of color who felt safer where they actually went was a cop. He was a cop, and he felt very safe in his new white neighborhood. And I felt very weird about that because he, was like, I got a pool. And I realized, so this is what happened. You're just a black guy who cashed out.
There's a gang. Cops is the original gang.
See, I can even talk about this. Oh, no.
It's all right. I got it.
I can even... Yeah, wait.
Oh, sorry, we're good. She'll be back.
I can even talk about it now because I had an NDA. I can talk about it now. The Tekashi 6ix9ine documentary was released, and I did some of the sound for that.
You got to see him?
That cop. Oh no, that guy's not gonna. Dude, he was under arrest during most of that production. And then when he was released, and then we had some dates. It was all during COVID, and then it was really there was just no way that guy was gonna ever say yes to an interview. Like you'd have to pay that guy money because it can't. It does not look good for him. He's an asshole. Like I'm not gonna go into it. He isn't. He is a terrible person. But to go back to the cop, really, that's the important part. The cop was real comfortable, had a pool in the back, was willing to he was a hip-hop cop. They literally called themselves hip-hop cops. And I already know this existed, and we are, like, a lot of people already know this.
Been there for many, many, many years. They've been around. They purposely are out there trying to find dirt on people and catch them when they're doing their dirtiest stuff. Yep.
And that was the most part, like, and he didn't even see the negative effects of doing so, like the fact that like you're subjectively only doing it to mostly black kids.
Yep.
I know Danny is I forgot his last name. Tekashi 6ix9ine's real first name is Danny, which is funny as hell. But I'm saying that he was that aberration too, and he snitched and got away with it too because he was that aberration.
Yeah. It's crazy.
When it comes to cops, it's a bit that's its own subject within itself. Cops keep each other's back.
I want to do a long show about that.
Yeah, we should, because honestly, I don't believe that anybody should be a career cop. That does stuff to you mentally. It's mentally damaging. Nobody should be subjected to that. You become a different person. There are plenty of people I've known that have been gone into being a cop with good intentions, and they come out jaded and racist and all this other things, and they start they don't know how to switch off, and it's bad. And it's especially bad, I think, for people of color that become cops, because then they lose their own self-identity within that. They get trained to identify and target their own people, essentially, and a lot of them they shouldn't be having all this stuff put on them. When they talk about defund the police, I really do believe that. I think it's poor wording that they used when they did for defund the police, because people automatically thought that they were trying to take money away from cops, and it's not about that. It's just reallocating some of the funds to actual places where people can get help. I shouldn't have to call a cop on a homeless person, because they're running naked or doing something harmful to themselves in front of a store. I should be able to call a social worker or someone who's trained in that to help them to actually get that person help. Police are not equipped for that.
They're not a catch-all.
Yeah.
They've been used as a catch-all for a long time.
Yeah, and it's a lot of pressure on them. I can't imagine the amount of pressure, and it's a stressful job. But at the same time, I don't think it should be a career. I don't think anybody should have that as a career.
It's like a military, you can't be at a war your whole life. You could be a soldier.
They have times where they can turn off.
Yeah.
But with cops, they don't turn off.
Yeah.
But the thing is that it's about choice too about the military. There's people who can serve up to 24 years
Yeah.
in the military, which is insane. And then not even be in a I don't know, a sergeant level role, like where they're high enough where they're commanding officers at a so with that in mind, I mean, I do believe in that cops if they should be doing separate jobs, they should be doing the actual investigation of crimes. That's not what they've been told with lately, and it's been told with every single problem of a certain town or area. And some of that has to do with the structure of how it was made before 40s, 30, like just a simple town just needed a law enforcement and needed some stuff done, and they had that one person who could do it or 10 people who could do it. So that's what they did. Now we're in a more sophisticated society, and we need to start talking about it as this is what we can do. We could have 911 be a switchboard for not just the police and the fire department, but for the fire department, the paramedics, the mental health services department.
Yeah.
And, and it's the simple things. I hate to tell you, the idea of a mental health service center EMT coming to you instead of just the regular EMT who wants to just take you to the fucking ER is different. It's a different kind of facilitating that person's problems. And I don't know how we're going to get there, because I think there's a lot of compassion that we haven't seen yet.
Well, I think we're gonna get there soon, because especially with 2020, it is bringing a bigger light on mental illness. People have had to deal with things that they've never had to deal with before, and I think it's going to be when it's everyone's problem, when people can finally admit nobody has no mental illness. There are people with mental illness, or just that need to have some kind of help when it comes to talking through mental issues. Nobody is without. I don't care who you are. There's no such thing as normal anymore. There's never really been. We've tried to make it seem like everybody seems like, oh, I'm okay. I think that time is long gone. I think especially with 2020, people are finding it to be acceptable to say, I'm not okay. And then when you start to say that and you start to make it normalize that, mental illness and strife within your own mentality is acknowledged with everyone, I think we'll make serious strides towards having those avenues available. As of right now, I think we're still on the long road, but it's getting there. Like, people are saying now, I'm not okay. I'm stressed out. I have anxiety. I have depression. I have this. And they're starting to be okay with it. Speaking to people of color, they're the first ones to try to hide that all away. Like, it's not,
people self-medicate.
Yeah, but they don't try to address those issues. They were told not to address the issue, bury it down, bury it with alcohol, bury it with everything else, and that's where you get all these problems, and it's just like, people have to address what's going on with them, and I think that's going to happen, especially with 2020. Everybody's got their issues have come and bubble to the surface, because some people have been locked inside their house, and that's the first person that you end up facing is yourself.